Well, I'm here today with Liam Halligan, GB News' economics and business editor, and we're in Aberdeen, this amazing, bustling place that's produced oil and gas and technology and innovation. And I wonder, the SNP government have turned their backs on the oil and gas industry, believing wind farms are the future. The British government have put taxes up to 75% on the profits from the North Sea. There are 25,000 people, I believe, in the Aberdeen area working in this industry.
Directly, yeah. And many more on top of that.
And many more outside of that, because it's good money that's being earned. Does it have a future?
I think it does. This is the oil and gas capital of Europe. But, you know, years ago, at the turn of the century, Britain was producing almost 3 million barrels of oil a day, largely centred on Aberdeen from the North Sea. And now it's significantly less than 1 million barrels a day, but it is still a really significant industry. It is still vital for our energy security. And yet the government, as you say, has taken taxation in little more than a year on the oil and gas industry from 40%, so more than regular corporation tax, from 65% and then to 75%. That was going to be in place until 2025. Now it's 2028. Imagine raising the money to spend tens of millions, hundreds of millions of pounds on an oil and gas exploration project and a drilling project, and then suddenly, from out of the blue, the state says, you know, you were going to be taxed at 40% on your profits, you're now going to be taxed at 75%. That's completely ruinous. And my concern is that the British state, the government, is just too politically convenient and attractive for politicians based in London to squeeze the oil and gas industry, and it massively impacts jobs, it massively impacts our energy security, and it will actually lead to less tax revenue because a lot of oil and gas projects will just be made completely invalid.
But in meeting our net zero targets, if we don't produce our own and import it from the rest of the world, they'll consider that a victory, won't they?
They will. And the First Minister of Scotland, Hamza Youssef, he was here in Aberdeen very recently, as locals will attest, and he says that Aberdeen can become the net zero capital of the world, whatever that means.
Please explain, interpret.
Look, there are definitely green jobs to be had. There is definitely industry there. I mean, down the coast at Teesside, people here in Aberdeen, huge connections, obviously, between the northeast of England and Aberdeen. They'll know that they're building carbon capture processes, lots of green jobs going there. But can it really replace the oil and gas industry in terms of the impact, the transformational impact on the local economy and indeed the national economy of Scotland? Look, we are, with the Norwegian government, constructing, as a United Kingdom, the largest offshore wind farm in the world at Dogger Bank, smack in the middle of the North Sea. That is not to be sniffed at. Whether or not that's the sum total of our energy policy, I don't know, but it shouldn't be, because, of course, renewables by their very nature are intermittent. We haven't really worked out how we store that energy effectively. We're going to need hydrocarbons for years, probably decades to come. It seems to me short-sighted in the extreme to just keep turning the screw on them in terms of taxation.
And that Dogger Bank, you know, the biggest wind farm in the world, but all these people in this room will, of course, be paying for that through subsidy on their electricity bills, without anyone ever having asked them whether it's actually what they want. Liam, let's get down to more day-to-day issues. Let's talk about bread and cheese and eggs, because those inflation figures that came out yesterday, bizarre, isn't it? That the financial experts had the inflation figures come in at 9.8%.
That was the forecast,
We'd have said, hooray, it's all going to be great, because it comes in at 10.1%. We're now back in a doom loop where it looks like interest rates may have to go up again. Why is food price inflation the worst in 45 years?
This was the really big story yesterday, Nigel. Not only that inflation didn't fall into single digits, it went from 10.4% in February to 10.1% in March. But as you and I have been saying for some weeks now, as inflation in general is coming down, food price inflation is going up. In fact, it's accelerating. Food price inflation went up from 18% in February compared to February 2022 to 19.1%. And not only is food price inflation going up as general inflation is coming down, food price inflation is going up as wholesale food prices across the world are coming down. They've been coming down for 13 months in a row.
You're not suggesting the supermarkets are ripping us off, are you?
I couldn't possibly comment. Look, there are obviously lags in the food supply chain. It takes time to plant food, to cultivate it, to process it, and so on. And maybe when some of that food was planted, fertiliser prices were really high, much higher than they are now. Fuel prices were higher than they are now. So it is complicated, but if I was the Prime Minister or advising the Prime Minister, I'd be getting the supermarket bosses in. I'd make them do, the perp walk into Downing Street.
Quite right.
Not to say that there's any wrongdoing, but they need to justify this completely incongruous trend. Look, I do think Rishi Sunak will meet the pledge for inflation to be halved by the end of the year, not because of anything that he does, but just because it's going to happen. But this does mean that interest rates are more likely to go up in May.
No. And, of course, it's those, Liam, thank you very much indeed. And, of course, it's those on the lowest incomes who, of course, suffer disproportionately the most with high food prices.